Belial, the demon of deception. Belial is the name of one of the most famous demons in Christian mythology. He is mentioned in various religious texts such as the Old Testament, apocryphal books, and medieval grimoires. In these sources, he is often described as one of the main enemies of God and humanity, as well as a symbol of evil and deception. The name Belial comes from the Hebrew expression Belial, which literally translates as without use or worthless. This name reflects the idea that this demon represents emptiness, the absence of goodness and true worth. Different sources attribute different traits and roles to Belial. Belial is known as a master of deception and lies. He has the ability to take on different guises and mislead people to achieve his goals. He is described in various sources as a cunning and devious spirit who knows how to manipulate people by playing on their weaknesses and fears. An example of such manipulation is a story in which Belial takes the form of a beautiful young man or girl in order to seduce a person and make him commit a sin. He can also pretend to be a friend or counselor, giving harmful advice and guiding a person down the path of destruction. This aspect of Belial emphasizes his ability to penetrate human souls and distort their perception of reality. He creates illusions that mislead and makes people believe in lies, believing them to be true. Belial is associated with destruction and chaos. He seeks to destroy the order and harmony created by God. His goal is to create disorder and confusion to weaken the influence of goodness and justice. Some texts say that Belial inspires people to commit violent acts, destruction, and anarchy. He sows seeds of enmity and hatred to divide people and destroy their communities. This emphasizes his hostility to any kind of order and stability. He sees order as a limitation on his freedom and power, so he seeks to destroy it. Belial is considered one of the most prideful spirits. He rejects the authority of God and seeks his own independence and power. His pride manifests itself in his desire to be equal or even superior to God, which led to his downfall and expulsion from paradise. Some sources say that Belial considers himself superior to other beings, including humans. He looks down on them, seeing them only as tools to achieve his goals. He recognizes no limitations and is willing to go to any lengths to assert his will. In some texts, Belial is associated with adultery and other sins of the flesh. He seduces people into the path of sin and debauchery by playing on their burning desires and passions. He promises pleasure and fulfillment, but ultimately leads to destruction and suffering. This aspect of Belial emphasizes his ability to use human passions and desires to achieve his goals. He knows that sexual sins are among the most powerful and destructive, so he often uses them as a means of manipulation. In Christianity, Belial is seen as one of the main opponents of God and the angels. He is a symbol of evil and darkness, opposing light and good. The New Testament mentions the phrase, sons of Belial, which is used to refer to those who follow evil and apostates. During the Middle Ages and Renaissance, Belial became a popular character in occult practices and magic. Grimoires such as the Key of Solomon and the Little Key of Solomon devote entire chapters to him. These texts describe rituals for summoning Belial and ways to control him. However, it is important to note that such practices are considered extremely dangerous and potentially destructive. In most religions and cultures, summoning demons is strictly condemned and considered a sin. Before starting the ritual, it is necessary to make thorough preparations. This includes cleansing the ritual site, creating protective circles, and preparing the necessary tools and materials. Usually magic circles, pentagrams, candles, incense, and other items specified in the text are used. The magician must go through a purification process involving fasting, prayers, and meditation. This helps to strengthen his spirit and prepare him to face the demonic entity. The magician draws a magic circle on the floor, inside which he will be during the ritual. The circle protects the magician from the demon's influence and prevents his escape. The magician begins reading spells and pronouncing the names listed in the grimoire. These spells are meant to attract Belial's attention and make him appear. Once Belial appears, the mage must take control of the situation using his knowledge and willpower. He dictates the terms of the contract and demands the fulfillment of his wishes. When the ritual is complete, the magician releases the demon, completing the ritual with the appropriate spells and closing the portal through which the demon came. The image of Belial is reflected in literature and culture. For example, in John Milton's novel Paradise Lost, Belial is presented as one of the fallen angels who, along with Lucifer, rebelled against God. In modern works such as horror and fantasy films, Belial is often portrayed as a powerful demon with supernatural abilities. One of the most famous stories about Belial involves his involvement in a rebellion against God. It describes the moment when part of the angelic host decided to oppose the Creator, wanting to gain independence and power. This story has deep roots in biblical and apocryphal texts, and is also reflected in numerous literary and cultural works. According to various sources, Belial was one of the highest angels created by God. He possessed great power and wisdom, but his heart was gradually filled with pride. Over time, this pride grew into a lust for power, and Belial began to wonder why God should be the sole ruler of the universe. Along with another powerful angel known as Lucifer or Satan, Belial began agitating among the other angels. They convinced their fellow angels that God was unfairly restricting their freedom and that they deserved more. Many angels succumbed to the persuasion and joined the rebellion. When the number of supporters of Belial and Lucifer reached a critical mass, an open confrontation began. The angelic armies were divided into two camps: those who remained faithful to God and those who sided with the rebels. A great battle, known as the War in Heaven, began. On God's side fought Michael the archangel and his faithful angels. They were determined to defend God's rule and restore order. On the side of Belial and Lucifer stood the fallen angels, ready to fight to the last for their ambitions. Despite all their power and cunning, Belial and his allies were unable to defeat the forces of light. God turned out to be much stronger than they had anticipated, and his faithful servants prevailed. Archangel Michael personally led the attack on the leaders of the rebellion, and as a result, Belial, Lucifer, and the rest of the fallen angels were cast down from heaven. Their fall was terrible and humiliating. They were cast into the abyss known as hell, where they were to suffer eternally for their rebellion. Henceforth they were known as demons, the eternal enemies of God and mankind. After this event, the world changed forever. Belial and the other fallen angels became symbols of evil and destruction. Their main purpose became to take revenge on God and interfere with his plans. They began to actively interfere in the affairs of people, trying to seduce them into the path of sin and destruction. Belial, in particular, became a master of deception and temptation. He used his cunning and eloquence to mislead people into sin. His influence spread far beyond hell, and many people fell under his power. Another interesting story is a prime example of how Belial works through deception and manipulation to seduce people from the right path. The Holy Father in question lived in a secluded desert, away from the hustle and bustle of the world. He devoted his life to prayer, fasting, and serving God. His faith was strong and his spirit pure. It was this kind of life that attracted the attention of Belial, who saw the Holy Father as a threat to his plans. One day, while the Holy Father was praying in his secluded dwelling, a young man approached him. He looked friendly and welcoming, and the Holy Father did not immediately realize that Belial himself, who had taken on human form, was standing before him. The young man began to talk with the Holy Father, asking questions about his life and beliefs. Gradually, the conversation turned to the subject of loneliness and the difficulties that a person living in the desert has to face. Belial began to talk temptingly about how hard it was to live alone, without friends or family. He described the beauty of the world, the riches that could be acquired, and the pleasures that could be experienced. He spoke of the fame and recognition that awaited the Holy Father if he decided to leave his desert and return to the world. Think, Belial said, how much good you could do with money and power. You could help the poor, build temples, spread the word of God. Wouldn't that be better than sitting here, alone? Then Belial made an offer that was hard to refuse. He told the Holy Father that he was ready to give him everything he dreamed of if he would agree to renounce his service to God. Belial promised wealth, fame, power, and pleasures the Holy Father had never known. All you have to do, Belial continued, is recognize me as your master. Acknowledge my authority, and I will fulfill your desires. The Holy Father listened intently to Belial, but his heart remained firm. He knew that behind these beautiful words lay lies and deceit. He knew that true happiness and joy do not come from earthly riches, but from closeness to God. No, replied the Holy Father, I cannot accept your offer. My life belongs to God, and I will not exchange my service for temporary pleasures. Belial was enraged by the Holy Father's refusal. He had not expected anyone to be able to resist his temptations. In his rage, he tried to frighten the Holy Father, threatening him with trouble and misfortune. But the Holy Father remained calm and confident in his faith. I am not afraid of you, he said, because I know that God will protect me. Your strength means nothing before his power. Realizing that his plans had failed, Belial disappeared, leaving the Holy Father alone. He left, realizing that this man was too firm in his faith to give in to temptation. Medieval grimoires often tell of people trying to make contracts with Belial and other demons. One such instance is described in the book Solomon's Little Key. This story is one of the most vivid illustrations of the dangers of deals with demonic forces. The alchemist was a man obsessed with the pursuit of knowledge and power. He spent years studying ancient texts and conducting experiments, but felt that his progress was insufficient. He wanted to learn more, to achieve more, and was willing to go to any lengths to achieve his goal. The alchemist had heard tales of powerful demons who could grant wishes, and decided this was his chance. He began studying grimoires, magical books containing instructions on how to summon demons and make contracts with them. One such grimoire was Solomon's Little Key, known for its detailed descriptions of rituals and spells. The alchemist carefully prepared for the ritual. He gathered the necessary ingredients, drew magic circles and symbols, and recited incantations in ancient languages. Finally, the day came when he was ready to summon Belial. The ritual began at night, when the stars were in the right position. The alchemist lit candles, drew a protective circle around himself, and began to recite the spell. Gradually, the air around him began to thicken, becoming heavy and cold. Out of nowhere came a voice full of threat. "What do you want?" the voice asked. The alchemist replied that he wanted to know all the secrets of the world, to become the wisest and most powerful man on earth. He offered his soul in exchange for this knowledge. Belial agreed, but warned the alchemist that the price would be high. He explained that the knowledge the alchemist would receive would carry great power, but that he would have to use it carefully. If the alchemist made a mistake, the consequences would be dire. The alchemist, blinded by desire, signed the contract with his blood. Belial fulfilled his request by giving him the knowledge he had dreamed of. At first, it seemed to the alchemist that he had gotten everything he dreamed of. He knew the secrets of nature. He could create gold from lead. He could predict the future. But soon he began to notice strange changes in himself. His mind became cloudy, his thoughts dark and disturbing. He no longer understood what to do with the knowledge he had gained. Over time, the alchemist realized that instead of wisdom and power, he had gained only pain and suffering. His soul began to decay, and he felt himself losing control. Eventually, his soul was consumed by Belial, and he remained in hell forever. Belial is a complex and multifaceted character whose history is rooted in ancient religious texts. He symbolizes evil, deception, and destruction. Yet he remains one of the most mysterious and interesting figures in Christian mythology.